Hi everybody, happy feast day of St Therese of Lisieux. My name is Kathryn Stinard. I am a musician here at Nativity. I'm actually one of the members of the Corona Choir. And I'm here to talk to you about St Therese. She's one of my favorite saints. She's been a big part of my life since college and the life of my husband and our family. And I won't go into all the details about why I love her because that would take too much time, but I will share that when we had our two boys and my parents went on a pilgrimage to Europe and they were going to Lisieux, so we asked them that if while they were in Lisieux if they could pray to St. Therese and ask her to intercede for us that we would have a girl, and we did. So we have our own Therese at home. She's 1 year old. So that's just a little bit of why I love St. Therese. So a little bit about St. Therese's life. She had a sort of idyllic childhood. She grew up with a strong Catholic family. Actually, both of her parents are saints too, St. Louis and St. Zélie Martin. And in France, as you can probably tell from her name, they're French. She had 4 other sisters. I'm trying to remember if there was 5 total or 5 sisters, but anyway, lots of sisters, and they actually all became religious sisters, which is cool. And when St. Therese was a child, she was a little bit spoiled, extremely sensitive, which I kind of love about her because I was a sensitive child myself. And she just would get easily upset all the time and was had a kind of an overactive conscience, which I know a lot of people like that. So if that's you, if you have an overactive conscience, you should pray to St. Therese. She was the baby of the family, and that kind of played into her kind of being spoiled and just kind of being babyish, which it kind of has a twist in the end of the story, which is beautiful. But when she was a teenager, she overheard her father talking maybe to a sister. Well, first of all, I should back up and say she lost her mother very young, so her older sisters kind of stepped into that role of mother for her. But as I was saying, when she was a teenager, one Christmas, I think it was, she overheard her father say something about how she kind of needed to grow up a little bit, basically, that she was getting too old for something, and it was very, very upsetting to her. She's very sensitive, so it would really hurt her feelings, and she kind of went to her room and was looking at her crucifix and had this moment of encounter with Jesus where she kind of describes it as like she grew up, like all in an instant. It's almost like he kind of gave her the grace of maturity, like in that moment. She no longer desired what she desired as a little girl, and she just kind of was steeled in her resolve to just live for Jesus and to love him above all. And when she was 15 years old, well, she knew from even before then that she wanted to enter the convent of Carmel, so the Carmelite sisters in the town of Lisieux, which some of her other sisters had already entered. And when she was 15 years old, she just couldn't wait any longer. She wanted to enter. They wouldn't let her because she was too young. She went to the bishop. He wouldn't let her. She went to the Pope, which was a big deal. Even though she was in France, it's not that far, but it was still a big deal. She went to the Pope and begged for permission to enter Carmel earlier than the usual age. And if I recall correctly, I think he basically said, ask the bishop or something. But she eventually was allowed to enter Carmel, younger than usual, if I recall correctly. And it was just there's a beautiful account in her autobiography, which I have right here, Story of a Soul, of her entering religious life and just her love story with Jesus, because she was just totally in love with him, kind of in a way that is just extravagant and over the top. And I'm just going to highlight like 3 things that I really love about St. Therese, sort of virtues, not like official virtues, but 3 attributes. And the first one is littleness, which is kind of another way of saying humility, but you can talk about humility with any saint. So I'm going to highlight specifically littleness for St. Therese because one of her common titles is the Little Flower, and she often kind of alludes to flowers in metaphors, and she says something about how, like, if everybody wanted to be a rose, which a rose is considered kind of the most glorious of the flowers, then the world would not be as beautiful, basically. And she considered herself to just be, like, plain and simple, just a little flower, which is why we often call her that. But she was humble in a really beautiful way, not a self-degrading way, but she just, in contrast to her childhood sensitivity, she eventually learned that people just make mistakes, and when she would make mistakes, she would sin, she would mess up. It was just not a big deal. She would obviously, like, she still had a strong conscience and would always confess everything in confession, but she almost expected it. She's like, of course I sinned, of course I fell short, that's what we do, and it's okay. Because, leading into the second attribute, she trusted the Lord in an amazing way, really. Her trust in him led to this boldness that is really only be described as kind of childlikeness. She was so bold and trusting of him. In her weakness, she would always run to him. Whereas it's so easy when we sin to be afraid and to run away, like Adam in the garden. She would mess up. She would basically just run to the arms of Jesus and tell everything, which is funny because when she was a little girl, she would do that with her parents. Like, let's say she, like, hit her sister, she would immediately, like, feel so bad. She would run to her parents and just confess what she had done readily, which we could probably all do a little more of that with our sins. Just run to Jesus and confess. And there's actually a quote here that I want to share about her trust. This is from the very, very end of her life. This is literally one of the last things that she wrote. She was writing constantly up until when she died. Literally, the last part here fades out into nothing because she couldn't hold the pen anymore. So, this little bit about how much she trusted the Lord. She's writing this to the superior of the convent, who happens to actually be her biological older sister. She says, "Most of all, I imitate the conduct of Mary Magdalene. Her astonishing, or rather her loving audacity, which charms the heart of Jesus, also attracts my own. Yes, I feel it. Even though I had on my conscience all the sins that can be committed, I would go, my heart broken with sorrow, and throw myself into Jesus' arms, for I know how much he loves the prodigal child who returns to him." And then there's part of another sentence that she couldn't finish writing. But that was one of her last reflections. And she writes about that a lot, just that there's a quote that I don't have memorized, but it's something about how our sins are just a drop in the ocean of his infinite mercy. And the third attribute is, I don't have any other better word for it, but extravagance. She just loved Jesus with so much extravagance and in such kind of like a wild, crazy way that she just wanted to do everything for him to the point of being unreasonable, which is kind of childlike in a way. Like, kids are, they just want to do things that are impossible because they love life and they love people, and like, my son's like, I want to fly. I'm like, sorry, you can't, but like, he just really wants to, he wants to do things that are impossible. And Therese was like that. She wanted to do everything for Jesus. She wanted to be every vocation in the church because she loved him so much. She wanted to serve him in every way that she could. She really, really wanted to be a missionary. Ironically, she entered Carmel, where they are cloistered and never leave. But she was actually an incredible missionary in that she reached the entire world. Everybody, like, all parts of the world, all the Catholics everywhere pretty much know of St. Therese, and she intercedes for them all and works through them. Anyway, a little bit about her extravagance. This was a story from when she was younger. Her older sister, Leonie, was giving her some dolls that she was basically done with, had outgrown. And she says, "Here, choose some of these to play with." And Therese said, "I choose all." And she took them all. And she reflects that this is a summary of her whole life. She says, "Later on, when perfection was set before me, I understood that to become a saint, one had to suffer much. Seek out always the most perfect thing to do and forget self. And then later she says, when she was older, she cried out to the Lord, "My God, I choose all. I don't want to be a saint by halves. I'm not afraid to suffer for you. I fear only one thing, to keep my own will. So take it, for I choose all that you will." So she basically told Jesus that whatever he had in store for her, she wanted all of it. And she did live that out. She died at the age of 24 of tuberculosis. And she kind of, in her prayer, just accepted every cross. She kind of wanted all of them, just to offer everything to Jesus. Everything that she possibly could. And she did suffer a lot at the end of her life as she was dying. But I think Therese's childlikeness in her humility, her pure, joyful humility, and just not thinking too much of herself, really, and her trust and boldness in going to Jesus, and her extravagant love, I think are really, really good things that everybody should pray for and pray to her intercession to seek after. And yeah, I just hope that today, on her feast day, you can say a prayer to her, maybe ask her to be a part of your life, to intercede for you all the time. I know she's done a lot for me and my family, so I hope this is helpful for you in your prayer and your spiritual life. Thanks.